Good morning, members of the media. Thank you all so much for coming out to the Minority Council's media briefing. Today we're going to focus primarily on our further in-depth response to the budget that was presented in Trinidad on Monday. I am going to chat a little bit about generally what we think about the budget, and then I'll go into some specifics based on the numbers that we've now had an opportunity to look at and to see what this really means for Tobago, what this really means for Trinidad and Tobago. I would like to start though by echoing something that I have said at practically every budget presentation that we've had in Tobago since we've become a member of the Minority Council, is that the Tobago House of Assembly has been making their budgets on nothing. They've had really no plans, and because there are no larger development plans for Trinidad, for the Tobago House of Assembly, it means that when they budget, it is done in a very haphazard way, and they seem to just be throwing little projects together to form the larger budget. Which is why, I'm not sure if you've noticed the numbers, what we requested from the Tobago House of Assembly in June or July when we presented our budget was $4.8225 billion. What we requested was $4.8225 billion. What we got this week is $2.283 billion. That is less than 50% of what we asked for. As a matter of fact, it's 47.3%. And let's just think about what that means. Let's look at it as in terms of just having a home budget. If you know that your household needs $1,000 to run because you need $100 for rent, $200 for food, and so forth, for you to be given $500 to run the same household that you know costs $1,000 to run, it is going to be an issue. It is going to cause a problem. That is why we continue to be concerned when our Chief Secretary, after understanding that we've been given only 47.3% of our budget, what he said is that they are comfortable with that, and he sees it as an optimistic, he sees it as a practical budget, when in fact that means that he is happy with trying to run the island with less than 50% of what we requested in the budget. And let's break that down a little bit in terms of what that actually means for us. It means for recurring, and recurring includes the monies that we use for salaries, the monies that we use to purchase equipment and so forth for the offices, the monies that we need to pay people's gratuity and those things. We requested $3.26 billion from the central government. What we got was $2.33 billion, which is about 62% of what we asked for. Okay, that's about 62% of what we asked for. That is a little bit more than the 50%, but still it is less than what was requested. The more important segment, though, is what we got for development projects. And to make this clear, development money is what we are using to inject into the economy so that we can build our island, so that we can make money, so that we can develop. What we requested for development was $1.45 billion. Let me repeat, $1.45 billion is what we requested from the central government. And what we got was $231.6 million, which is 16%. 16% of what we asked for. Let that sink in for a little bit. It is as if we asked for $100 because we know we need the $100 to run the island, and what they gave us is $16. There is no way anybody with any sense, there is no way anybody with any real understanding of what we need on this island could be happy with us getting $16, 16% of what we asked for. That is a significant deficit. And just to get an idea of what some of those projects that are not going to be funded or are going to be minimally funded. Our Tobago Tourism Agency, which we've been touting, which we've been so proud of all of the work that they've done since 2.5 years ago when when it was incorporated. We asked for $40 million to do the work, which includes the marketing of the island and so forth. We got $5 million. We asked for 40 and we got 5. That tells you how much they think about or how much they understand what is necessary for Tobago to market itself the way we want to. There's a coastal project where we asked for $8 million and we got $1 million. There is a sea defense project where again we asked for several $million and only got $1 or $2 million. Now these are the projects, for example, that we would be using to ensure that Scarborough Set doesn't fall into the sea, and then to ensure that the Shore Park Cultural Complex does not fall into the sea because of the erosion that's happening along the coastline there. Those are the kinds of deficiencies that we are going to be working with in the Tobago House of Assembly. That's why it is really, really sad. It is really disheartening that the Chief Secretary would then stand up and smile and say, we are happy with what we got. There is no way you could be happy with getting 16% of what you requested to do the work that is necessary to develop Tobago. Let me also add that we requested $73.3 million for our URP project. And we know that the minister proudly stated that we are going to increase the salaries for URP and CPEP. And that is fine. But when we request $73.3 million for URP and central government gives us $18 million, I am trying to figure out how will the Tobago House of Assembly afford to pay that salary increase that the minister promised these workers. The same applies for CPEP. We asked for $39.2 million. Well, the minister did not say anything about how much CPEP would get. We are hoping that that does not mean that we get zero, but he made no mention of how much out of that $39.2 million we will get for CPEP. So we are promising on one hand that we are going to increase the salaries for CPEP and URP, but you give the Tobago House of Assembly less than 24% of the amount of money we requested for the URP program. I am wondering if that making any sense. And anybody who has sense would know that those maths simply do not add up. They simply do not compete. So when you are chatting with the members of the executive, please ask them specifically how they plan to deal with these deficiencies, because these are significant deficiencies that we are working with. Another thing that we have to be conscious of is the fact that the minister spoke about the airport expansion project. And the airport expansion project, he basically said that we are going to get money from the Caribbean, Caribbean and international. We are going to get technical support and financing from Caribbean CAF. Yes, we are going to get money and technical support from CAF. Now, I know that possibly means, we don't know what that means. This is a project that is supposed to begin in early 2020, which is a couple months from now. It is also a project that is going to have several members of the public uprooted from their homes and sent out. What we were hoping that the Minister for Finance would say is how much money they have actually allocated in the budget to compensate those residents who will be moved from their lands to accommodate this airport relocation. We are hoping that he would have said very proudly, we have allocated $1 million, $1 billion, whatever it is, to have these people, to ensure that these individuals are paid and are compensated for removing them from their property. If you recognize, nothing was said about that. And what we are saying is that we are hoping that they do not force these individuals to move, because the Section 4 notice was delivered, and the Section 4 notice basically said they need to move by February. We are hoping that when those individuals move by February, they already have a check in hand to move with. Because what we don't want is for them to be uprooted, for them to be moved, and then they have to fight the government for their monies after the fact. So we were hoping that the minister would have been very, very clear about how much money was allocated to compensate these residents for uprooting their lives. That, of course, was not mentioned, and I have heard no one on our side in the Tobago House of Assembly speak specifically about that, which is very disheartening, because we in the Tobago House of Assembly are responsible for our people. And even if the central government does not make mention of it, we should have ensured that that was taken care of and that that is mentioned in the budget, because it is critical. I was surprised when I got to Trinidad, when I got to the Parliament on Monday to witness the budget, that members of the peace group, who have been the group that has been advocating on behalf of the residents, were also there protesting in front of the Parliament on Monday. Yes, they were there. Several of them, about 20 of them, went down to protest in front of the Parliament on Monday, and I'm really happy they did that, because their voices still need to be heard. We have heard them say frequently, and it was announced, that the lands that they have identified for those residents to purchase, they have just gotten clearance they have just gotten environmental clearance to develop the land and so forth, which of course will take time, which of course we know will not happen overnight. So that also means that even if those lands are available, it may not be available in time for the residents to pack up and move in time for this February or January 2020, when they are required to move. So that's the other thing. The third thing that I would like to chat about is the fact that we continue to hear all of the complaints about the broken health system. We hear about it on Facebook. We all experience it, where we have members of our families who are going to A&E, who sit there for 12 and 14 and 16 hours waiting to be seen. We know the horror stories, which is why we are questioning the thought process behind having a system that is completely broken and spending money to have the new Roxborough Hospital, because it was announced that $60 million would be allocated to have the new Roxborough Hospital constructed. Now, we have no problem with a hospital in the East being constructed. We have no problem with that whatsoever. It is necessary, and we agree with that. However, we have to look at the timing, and we have to look at the opportunity cost when we are currently not having the best system, not having the best service at our current health facilities, to then go and spend $60 million on a new health facility without fixing what we already have. Remember, the hospital that we currently have at Signal Hill is about 6 years old. This is a relatively new facility, and we continue to hear about ACs not working. We continue to hear about labs not getting reagents to do what they need to do. We continue to hear about the X-ray machine breaking down and the MRIs not being available and so forth. We continue hearing about all of those deficiencies in a building that is less than 6 years old, which means we are not doing something when it comes to the management of that service correctly. Adding one more structure to a system that is already not functioning does not make sense. We also have to recognize that when at the last sitting, I specifically asked the Secretary with responsibility for health, how much money is the TRHA owing other agencies, whether it's for lab reagents or whatever. And the answer as at July was $15 million. Was that money allocated in the budget so that we can pay off all of the people that we owe and start afresh? So as I said before, we do not mind having the hospital. We don't mind. As a matter of fact, that is one of the things that has been in the mandate of the PDP since we've started operating. But we have to look at the opportunity cost. We have to look at whether at this moment, given the deficiencies in the health system currently, whether spending that money then makes the most sense. Those are the main questions that we need to ask ourselves. Yes, let's do the hospital, but does it make sense to do it now, given that the system is as broken as it currently is?
Good morning again, members of the media. I had indicated to Dr. Faith that once quarter to reach and I didn't arrive, she should just go ahead, but she waited and you all were patient. So I think I owe you a lunch someday. Maybe not today. Several lunches. On the 27th, you all could get more than lunch.
Yes.
And we welcome you. We'll tell you about that subsequently. Some additional things about the budget debate that we need to pay attention to as an island is that one of which is the mentioning of Tobago autonomy, which was brought up by the Minister of Finance and said that, that will be afforded to Tobagonians in 2020. And what is ironic, and in fact it's situational irony, is that those who were in opposition in 2013 and who said then that they will not support any debate for an autonomy bill in the lead up to an election, are now the ones who have postponed and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and delayed. And yes, we appreciate that it was at the Joint Select Committee for a while, and the Joint Select Committee of Parliament would have done several reports and several takes on the matter and several investigations. But truth being told, we have had almost 5 years of this central government. And the fact that the Parliament is only considering to bring it before the Parliament sometime next year, and given that next year is an election year and it's going to get muddied in all of the chaos that will happen down in Trinidad, is just very sad. And I think Tobagonians must pay attention to that. And it's almost as if the PNM is deliberate in not wanting this to work and not wanting it to go through. But the opposition in Tobago, the minority in Tobago, is giving the commitment to push its support behind ensuring that the Tobago Autonomy Bill goes through, and that an acceptable bill goes through, one that is acceptable to the people of Tobago, that it goes through whether it comes late this year, next year, or the year after. We are committed to that. But we are very suspicious of the timeline being given now by the Minister of Finance. And we are suspicious in that clearly Tobago autonomy was of no priority to them. Clearly, our issues aren't priority to the central government. And we wish that that changes, because Tobago's development is national development. As you would have seen, the matter of Magdalena Grant featured heavily. And that's because Tobago's development is national development. And what we do in tourism can have a telling impact in terms of our foreign access to foreign currency. And so the nation needs Tobago's development to move apace. And so we hope that the PNM is not just creating a tactic to eventually not give us that autonomy and to give us an excuse next year. Because the last time this came up, the excuse was we can't discuss and debate this now because we are going towards an election. We are going towards an election next year, and they're saying, well, we're going to have it tabled for next year, and we hope that it comes through. The second matter I want to raise, and I've been raising it all week, is that without regard for how much we have received and not received, and the reality is there's nothing surprising in the arithmetic. It will continuously be 4.3% unless this matter of the Tobago autonomy is addressed properly at the Parliament. It won't get better than that. But notwithstanding that, for us as Tobagonians, we have to continuously ask, are we or have we been getting value for money? That's the important question. And even while rushing here, people are sending me photos and videos of the new administrative complex in Roxborough leaking, as in literally leaking. This is a building, I was there and toured the building for the opening, and it's leaking. This is a new building. Why is it leaking? Didn't they seal it with concrete roof properly? I mean, come on. We would have spent millions on this building. And it's not just the Roxborough administrative complex that is experiencing leaks at the moment, but the fact is we have mismanaged almost every project on the island. We have overspent on almost every project on the island. We're still paying for mill shelves by the millions every year, and we'll do so throughout this generation, throughout my generation and your generation. And the building is still grossly underutilized. We are overspending still for where the Division of Health is. And so we have just been very chaotic in how we have been managing our resources. We have not had audited accounts in a very long while, and for nothing they will audit the accounts of the THA. And I want to put it out there now, and quite forcefully, at the risk of people saying I have no evidence. But in the absence of proper accounting, we have no choice but to opine that mass corruption and theft is happening in the THA. And that is a safe opinion to have, given that we have not had any auditing of any of our accounts in quite a while. And so we need to get our act together, and more so with the proposed coming on stream of $16 million from CAF, which is a South American Development Bank, to deal with coastal remediation. Even with those kinds of monies, we have to pay attention to how we manage our resources. If we have little, we need to manage it well until such time that we are able to acquire more, right? And at this present moment, we are not managing our resources well, and the onus, the responsibility for that lies squarely with the Executive Council. They are the ones with the purse and the pull strings, and so they are the ones who have been mismanaging the resources, the financial resources of the island. Questions?
What projects or sectors the minority recommend the Assembly focus on, given that we asked for 4.8 billion and we are going to receive 2.23 billion?
And only a few million for
200 and something million for development. Well, you know, one thing that we have asked for, and I'm not answering your question at first, one thing that we have asked for continually is, given that we always get way less than what we ask for, the Tobago House of Assembly needs to go back and completely redo the budget now that we know how much money we are going to get. That is something that is critical, because if you look at the actual numbers, if you look at the numbers allocated for each project that's listed there, the amount of money that's listed is almost not enough to even get started with many of the projects, which is part of the problem that we continually see. The money that is listed is not enough to even start. You know, it's like if you need to you're constructing a house, if you have less than the amount to buy the whole pallet of blocks, then you can't even start because you don't have enough to buy an entire pallet of blocks. And that is what we've been seeing happening. And given that that is what we've been seeing happening, we need to go back to the drawing board now to rethink what we can do and what we should do. One of the things we spoke about, and the two motions that we raised for this year are two issues that we can start working on now as a priority. The motion that we raised 2 weeks ago referred to us starting the tourism authority that would allow us to regulate the tourism sector. That is something that if we spend a little bit of time and effort working on doing our work on the ground now, using the monies that are there now to get the consultants, to get the lawyers, to get the team of specialists, that is something that we can start on now because we are tourism focused. So that is something that we would highlight as a priority because we do have monies. The tourism agency has 5 million, although we asked for 40. That is some money that is there that we can allocate to starting a project like that now, since having high-class standard tourism products is something that is critical for us here on the island. Yes.
Okay, we are investigating a report that the majority of several divisions in the THA have been underspending their allocation in the first 3 quarters of the year and then rushing to spend, use up the money for the want of a better word
in the final quarter.
Well, we have heard those reports. We haven't seen the documentary evidence of such as yet, but we have heard the reports. But that practice is not new to the THA. In essence, that practice has happened for quite a while. Additionally to that, if you look at our what is budgeted for Tobago, you will see that a gargantuan sum is there for recurrent expenditure, right? So in excess of 1.2 billion thereabout for recurrent expenditure. But at the same time, if you think about it, folks are not getting the gratuities. Case in example, THA Division of Education has about 7 years of gratuity for me. I've never received gratuity, although I was a contracted employee for the 7 years I taught. There are folks who have retired, got their first check from Trinidad, and waiting a year, 2 years to get their second check. And all of these things are supposed to be covered in the recurrent expenditure. But the fact that people are still not getting their monies that are owed to them, gratuities owed to them, that the state owes them, that monies that they can use to invest in businesses, that they can use to pay for medical care, that they can use to pay down on mortgages, that they can use to improve family lives, they can't get, says that when we do receive our monies from Trinidad, we have been doing some magic work in terms of moving monies around the place and using it not for the purpose for which they were budgeted, but for other purposes. And that's why every month in November, and they will come again in November, and they will say, well, we'll discuss some new priorities, but they will never come and bring to your house new schedules. So you will not see a new budget. Yeah. They will just come and talk very generally about some things that they want to do, but they will not come and specifically say, well, now this is what we have, and this is how we're going to spend what we have. Yeah. This is a new schedule. That's not going to come. And I challenge you, when November comes and that motion comes on the order paper, ask them, are we going to get a new schedule of expenditure, given that we now know how much money we have working with, and given that we have more or less a ballpark figure of what our tax collection will be? Can we now have new schedules? And I'm certain the answer will be no. And the answer will be no because we have been fiscally irresponsible with how we manage our resources.
Much has been made about the authority given to be able to borrow.
Well, this is the second straight year we're hearing it. We heard it last year, and we heard a ballpark figure of 300
300
million last year, but it didn't materialize last year. So we didn't see any of that borrowing last year, although it was said that we would be given the permission last year to borrow. It was said again this year. A figure wasn't given this year, but what the minister did mention is that immediately we should be getting a loan of 16 million US from CAF, which is the South American Development Bank, that is supposed to take care of combating the effects of climate change and coastal rehabilitation and so on. So that's as far as we know in terms of the borrowing. And if you remember, sometime either earlier this year or late last year, the Chief Secretary, my God, I nearly give him more credit than he's due. The Chief Secretary was on record as saying that more or less I have no manners or out of place for asking for the THA to audit itself and for the THA to put its finances in order before borrowing any money. Thankfully, we didn't borrow any last year because our house is still not in order in terms of how we manage our finances. So I don't know what will happen this year, whether it will materialize into anything or not.
Which brings me to the question. I look at you guys in the PDP city, and I listen to your questions and I listen to the responses, and you all seem very frustrated, especially you, Doc, seem very frustrated by the responses, especially from the secretary. Are you going to try a different strategy to get information? I mean, we understand the reporters, and we have information and we go to them,
Right.
and they don't answer, and we run the story anyway and say they don't answer. But there must be some way, some method we could use to get answers about what's happening today too. You know, a lot of projects, a lot of costs and everything seems to be a mystery.
Right.
A number of the contractors are associated with different projects, especially subcontractors. If you look at the list, you see those that there's a constant. And other people have reported to us that they have been sidelined, you know, in favor of these people who are affiliated with the counter administration.
Right.
How do you plan to get more information?
Well, the obvious answer, there are two obvious answers. We will continue asking the questions because I think they firmly believe that if they frustrate us enough, we will stop asking the questions. We will continue asking questions. We would also start using Freedom of Information Act to force them. But we've also seen where, in instances where those requests were made in the past, that they've basically said we don't have to answer and so forth. And then you have to go to court and all of that. The reality, and I've been telling a lot of Tobagonians, that the reality is now that Tobago has to recognize that the PNM does not care about Tobago. And the PNM does not care about accounting to the people of Tobago. So Tobago needs to decide to use the only other tool, which is the political tool, and vote them out. Because they have shown over and over and over that they will not answer, they do not care, they will continue doing all of the corrupt practices that we know they are doing, and they simply don't care about the average man on the ground. The average man on the ground has to then stand with the PDP and use the tool that we all have on election day to completely get rid of them.
You mentioned
What's your opinion on them waiting till they get the budget and then pool everything together instead of using it for what was assigned to them on the documents and on the audit papers and whatnot? How do you feel about this method that the teacher does every year?
Well, the result of that is that we get little done. Think of running a state like running a country. Sorry, like running a household. So running of the state or the island is like running a household. You hope in the new year, with a New Year's resolution, to put on an additional bathroom, an additional bedroom, because the children are getting older and they can't share bedrooms anymore and they need some privacy. And you also hope to buy a new TV, because a World Cup year is coming and you need the new big television and so on. As the year turns over, you realize, well, the CPO isn't negotiating with my union, so no back pay will be coming. I still have a loan paying before the bank, so I still have some debt. I must now sit and look at my disposable income and decide which projects are priority and which ones I will do first. And so I might decide, okay, I can't afford the new bathroom, the additional bedroom, plus the big TV that I desire. So I will scratch out the TV and stick with my 14-inch for the meanwhile, or maybe the neighbor will be nice enough that we'll line by the neighbor and watch the World Cup, so I'll scratch out the TV. Between the bedroom and the bathroom, I might say, well, the household already has one bathroom, so we'll stick to the one bathroom for the meanwhile, and I'll put on the one bedroom. By the end of the year 2020, we have an additional bedroom, so I was able to achieve something from amongst my list of plans. Similarly, the THA, when it receives its monies, must look at what it now has before it and must decide which of my projects are priorities, which ones can I complete, and then go to those that I can complete and complete them. Some projects are okay being done over a period in time, and they need to say to the public, well, this project that we scheduled to take 2 years will now take 4 years, because we can only afford to spend X amount now, X amount next year, and so on and so on. That is the kind of budgeting and expenditure that we need to do. If we don't do that, a lot of projects will not get done. And then when we add it to the mix, corruption, the kickbacks, the exorbitant sums that contractors are charging the THA for some projects, like spending 13 million on a community center that is smaller than most homes that cost 2 million on the island, kind of says something about how the executive have been managing our resources. Just has not been managing them well.
Now, can I add, let me add one other thing though. One of the reasons why the current THA executive can't do what Assemblyman Augustine is outlining, it's because we really don't have a larger plan. We really don't know for the island what we hope to accomplish in 5 years or in 10 years. Because if you have a plan, a larger plan that says you hope to have a 5-bedroom house in 5 years, then it would make sense for you to add the 1 bedroom this year, add the 1 bathroom next year, add the little addition to the kitchen the year after, because you know where you are heading. You know the ultimate goal is this. The Tobago House of Assembly does not have a developmental plan at all that it is working with. And unfortunately, even during the periods where we had a plan, the THA was not following the plan. I remember sitting I was embarrassed, not almost, I was absolutely embarrassed while listening to one of those GSC a couple years ago, when even the chief administrator, when they asked the chief administrator, who should be the chief person in Tobago who is managing how these monies are spent, when they asked him about the comprehensive economic development plan, he did not know many of the key components of that plan. And that is the plan that we spent a lot of money, gave a consultant for them to create for us to use that plan to guide all of the projects. The way that is supposed to work is, if you have this larger plan, you would know that in 2020 or in 2030 or in 2040, this is what the island needs to look like. So every year you can decide, if I only have $10 million, I will spend this $10 million on this particular thing because it is a stepping stone to where we need to be at 2030. And if you make those kinds of strategic decisions, then even if you get less money than you had asked for, you know that even the money you have, it is going to be spent on a project that is not just going to be a by-the-way project. It is a project that fits into the larger plan that you have. The Tobago House of Assembly currently has no developmental plan. That means we've just been spending money, we've just been doing project haphazardly, and that is why after what would be 20 years and having spent close to $50 billion, we would really have nothing. And I make no apologies, nothing to show for it.
You mentioned the peace movement that you first president. Did you have a time to speak with them?
Yes. Well, both of us spoke with them, and you see, I think the peace movement is being mischaracterized by some.
Yeah.
Some are pushing the narrative that the peace movement doesn't want the new airport, and that is not true. What the peace movement is saying is that we need to be treated fairly.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know what will happen in terms of our compensation and when we will receive those compensations. Thirdly, we also need to have a clear idea in terms of your timeline, so that we could organize our own lives. Fourthly, if the THA is providing alternative lands, we need to be sure that those alternative lands are as suitable as where we now live and can accommodate our family. And to me, those are not unreasonable expectations from those in the peace movement. The Minister of Finance did speak about the airport. He did say in the budget report that he would provide fairly compensated, whatever fairly means. But as I've said previously to the media, we can't take the central government's word for it. We have to see it to believe it. And governance is the art of negotiation. And when you're in government, you are constantly negotiating with those that you are governing. And it cannot be that I have a project and I will just put the project down and that's it. You have to spend some time talking to the people who will be affected, negotiating with them, reasoning with them, trying to convince them otherwise. It cannot be a heavy-hand approach. Such hackneyed model of governing and governance cannot work in 2019. And that's what's not happening. Because the people are not being given sufficient information, because they have no sense of how much the compensation will be. Like, why is it so hard to say, well, we wish to compensate you at X amount per square foot? Why is it so hard to say that now? Why is it so hard to say, well, if we're moving you, we can give you land plus some monies, or we can give you money without land? Like, just put what your offer is on the table from now and let the people see the offer and negotiate with you fairly and honestly. What is so hard in saying to Tobagonians, this is what the airport will look like, this is why we need this amount of land? Because remember, Patrick Manning did turn this sod for a new airport in 2003. Also remember that Patrick Charles had a plan for a new airport terminal as well. So it means then that there were lands that they saw before that they needed for the terminal that didn't require this amount of land acquisition. So be transparent in the process. Say to people, this is how much land we plan to get because of X, Y, and Z. This is what the plant will look like. This is how much acreage it will take up. We also need extra land for security or extra land to do hotels or casinos or whatever additional services must go along with the airport. Be honest, be transparent with people, and they will see this project through. If they don't do that, then they will always meet resistance from people. And on top of all of that, we do have a chief secretary, we do have a chief secretary. Believe it or not, we do have a chief secretary. I know that Mumuism has become the new political philosophy of those in office, but the chief secretary is supposed to be the advocate on behalf of the people in the area. The chief secretary is also supposed to be the one sitting with them, hearing their concerns, relaying it to the prime minister. Because based on the law, the prime minister and the chief secretary should be having regular meetings. And so I'm sure they meet very frequently. I'm sure they call each other every morning and say, hey boss, what's up, how things? And I'm sure in those telephone conversations, they could talk about the airport and being transparent with the people and, just putting the entire deal on the table. I don't understand what is so hard about putting the entire deal on the table for people to see it and negotiating from a very honest position. I don't understand why that could be so difficult.
Now, can I also add that one of the things that I was the minister said is that in addition to the airport expansion, they will also be doing a new road from Chauvin to the airport. And if you look at that trajectory from Chauvin straight to the airport, it means that in addition to those individuals who are currently being moved for the airport expansion, there will also be other people in that Bon Accord area who would be required to move for that road to happen.
And businesses.
And this is a perfect time, given that we know that this is what we are going to do, put that on the table also so that people are aware that I am in the direct path of this highway and I need to put my house in order so that when the government moves me, I know what my next steps are. These are simple things that you could just place on the table so that people know. In the absence of information, people will speculate. And that is what has been happening. We have not been getting information, so people have been speculating. And you can't be angry with people who speculate because you are not the one who provided. You did not provide the information.
One kind of question, and this is a little bit off the budget, but it has to do something that happened this morning as it regards to the horror house, basically. But information coming to light was that this was supposed to be a rehab center for ex-prisoners and deportees. And there's also information coming out that, because some of these people had mental problems, it justified putting them in cages and so on. And it seems that that mentality when it comes to approaching mental health issues is still alive in the country. What do you have to say to that?
All of Trinidad and Tobago should be ashamed. We should all be ashamed. I mean, when the news first broke, the Commissioner of Police first sold it as if it was human trafficking, which shows an absolute failure on the part of the Commissioner of Police and the TTPS in terms of the investigation. Because if you did proper investigation, you should have figured out that this was a state-sponsored institution. It shouldn't come after the fact. And you shouldn't have done it with the full glare of the media and photos and your bloggers and so on, only to realize later on that this is an institution that works along with the state. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we should be ashamed because we do not have adequate facilities to treat with mental illness. And we have not put enough resources in that area. If I had my phone on me, I will perhaps share with you a concern that somebody sent that they didn't want me to put their name to. But the person was saying, look, I have family members who went to that institution and who is doing very well now. And the person is saying, as bad as the conditions are, the reality is St. Anne cannot hold in the quantum of folks needing help, one, and they can't hold them for long enough. Yeah. And so they refer them to institutions like that in the hope, because the families are not equipped and they don't have the capability to treat with the mental illness and to house them at home. And the person was saying, quite frankly, when they release them now home, what's going to happen? Families might just not want them home because they can't manage them. They will just be on the street. And so as a nation, we should be ashamed. We should be ashamed that in 2019, this is still how we are treating with mental illness and drug addiction and substance abuse and so on. We should be ashamed. For us in Tobago, we should ask ourselves, what is happening up at Trek? Because when you go up at Trek, up at the Old Fort, I want the Secretary of Health. And, I was just tempted a little while ago to be even derogatory in how I refer to her. But I guess the good angel tapped me in time. But go to the Secretary of Health and ask her to go up to that facility with you guys and to show you the work being done there. And I kid you not, work is not being done there. They have basically shut down the facility without shutting it down. We no longer have those living in the facility. We're not having the group counseling as we used to have anymore. So where they're supposed to go, walk around Scarborough, see if you're not noticing an increase in the number of street dwellers along the street. I see people washing their clothes and things on the street in Scarborough now. Since when that was Tobago's story? Since when that was a characteristic of Scarborough? And that's because we are just not doing enough to treat with mental illness and substance abuse. We're not doing enough. So as a nation, we should be ashamed, and we should be ashamed that this facility, that the state is partnering with that facility, that we have not had people checking up on the facility as they should have to ensure the conditions are right. We should be ashamed that that facility is actually helping people. Imagine what will happen if we had proper facilities in place. How much more we will help. How much more people will prevent from going to the streets. How much more people we will rehabilitate. We should be ashamed as a country. And the budget was just read, and I'm listening carefully to hear what the Minister of Health will see on this issue. How much from his budget will be placed towards mental health care and substance abuse? How much more will be placed on that, as opposed to the other vanity projects that we tend to put our monies towards? And we're busy building hospitals all over the place. How many of these new hospitals and institutions that we're building have capabilities to treat mental health issues? Scarborough Hospital, ask the question, how much mental health cases can they see and treat at the psych ward at the Scarborough Hospital? And the reality is not very much. And for the rest of the public, don't take yourself out and blame the government, because we too are part of the problem. Because in 2019, we still think mental illness is the result of demon possession. In 2019, we still think mental illness is because somebody does something and it's some obia why you're mad. In 2019. And so we're not giving a care in the world, because people who mad, they had to have done something wrong in a former life, and somebody had to have done them something for them to get to that state. And so we just treat people with mental illness as if they're not worthy human beings, when in reality, people with mental illnesses must receive the same care as somebody who is diabetic, who has cancer, who has hypertension, who is HIV positive. They must receive the same care and attention. And it tells a lot about a country, about a society, by how we treat the most vulnerable among us. And today, this morning, Trinidad and Tobago did not look good in the eyes of the world. And what's worse is that the world first thought it was human trafficking, and then they get to realize now, oh no, it's not human trafficking. Even worse than that is a state-partnered institution, a state-partnered church that's managing this institution that we use to treat substance abuse, mental illness, deportees, ex-prisoners, everybody just lumping one in cages, some naked, some in clothes, some mistreated, all sort of story. People without proper qualification and so on, treating with them. Clearly, there are more mad people in the parliament than in that institution. I think we should probably go there and take the 41 that's there and carry them there and lock them in the cages. They need that kind of rehabilitation. As David Rudder sang, is madness inside that parliament. And I'm sure you have seen the Joint Select Committee meeting where the man spoke about the great work that they're doing. So clearly, it are more mad people in the parliament than in St. Anne's.
Mr. Augustine, yesterday you gave your views on agriculture and housing.
Mm-hmm.
You can meet the media. Can you share your thoughts on education?
Okay, well, education actually in the national budget would have received the largest pie in the national budget, which is a good thing. However, whether that will translate into meaningful returns is another question altogether. When it comes to education in Trinidad and Tobago, we need to have a revolution in that sector. Yeah. We need to take a next look at the Concordat and how that works. We need to take a next look at elitism within the education system. We need to take a look at teacher qualification, teacher training, and how teachers disseminate information to students. We need to take another look at student support. And for us in Tobago, where we have some of the best physical plants, where we spend more resources per person than any other educational district in the country, where we have the best teacher to student ratio in the country and perhaps in the Caribbean, a question that we have to ask ourselves in Tobago is why are we not performing better? And if the yardstick for performing well are these exams that we all do at the end of 5th form and 6th form and standard 5, if that's the measurement being used, how is it we are not performing as well as or better than the others in the country and the region, given all of those positives that I just mentioned about Tobago as an educational district? And so we have to seriously take another look at our education sector. And for us in Tobago, we like for us to take a look even at textbooks and at curriculum. And again, a motion was placed on the other paper that was in last year. I believe when I placed a motion about having more Tobago-centric education. I saw a social studies textbook that talked about a water carnival in Charlottesville. I don't even know what the hell is a water carnival and where that exists in Charlottesville. And spoke about Tobago heritage and things in Tobago heritage that does not exist. And that is in a social studies book recommended by the Ministry of Education. And we have a division of education guided also by a THA Act that empowers the THA. If the THA wants, the THA could commission its own textbooks if it wants, add stuff to the curriculum, tweak the curriculum to suit if it wants. But none of that happens. And we just keep going along. And when the exam results come out, we run haphazardly to the schools, try to take out some picture with who placed first in C, and pray to God that they place high enough in the country that we could post the pictures at the airport. And that is the sum total of what we see as our educational thrust in Tobago. And that cannot be our educational thrust in Tobago. Much more than that has to be placed in it. Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Oh, make sure I look nice, eh?